大家好. Can everyone hear me and see me? Let me know in the chat. I'm just handling 50 million different screens right now, trying to situate myself. Hello, Jose and Paco. 大家好. Oh, can everyone hear me and see me? That's my own voice. There we go. So today we're going to be talking about. Can we do full screen, please? How do we do full screen? There we go. Awesome. This is my new presentation software that I'm very excited about. So this is how to fix your Mandarin pronunciation. 如何把你的中文发音练得更像母语者? So I know pronunciation is a big deal for a lot of you watching this. And I wanted to clear some things up about it because, in my opinion, it's nowhere near as complicated as people make out. Okay, so let's go through a few things. I'll teach you some stuff and then we'll do like a Q&A and just go from there. So my background, we've been doing this for quite a while, just13年来，我亲自带过好几百个学生、学习者，也通过我们的课程教过上千个。So, you know, I've got quite a lot of experience, I would say, in pronunciation. I haven't got any degrees in Chinese or anything like that. I've just spent a lot of time on this topic, and I would say my pronunciation's pretty darn close to a native. In fact, I would even argue quite a bit better than a lot of natives because a lot of native Chinese people obviously have very thick accents, find it quite difficult to pronounce quote unquote standard 标准普通话. So here are some major issues that I found with pronunciation. And go ahead and let me know in the school chat. By the way, if you are not in our community, you can go ahead and sign up with the link at the bottom. Oh no, the link at the bottom is actually for our Black Friday sale, for our Black Friday promotion. But if you want to sign up to our community, just head to mandarinblueprint.com and just get signed up. And then you can pretty much join the community within a few hours. And then we can do Q&A. You can even jump on a call later on as well. We'll see. So I've identified three major pronunciation issues. Let me know in the school chat if you agree with this, if you resonate, or if there's anything that I'm missing. So I'm going to work through the three major sort of issues or root causes or where people go wrong, my suggested solutions to fix pronunciation, even if you've been stuck for months or years. So here they are. Problem number one is pronouncing Chinese like English. Yeah. And of course, there are many people learning Chinese that are not native English speakers, but pinyin isn't English based, it's sort of based on the Roman alphabet, right? So you could replace English with Spanish or French if you wish, but I think you guys watching this kind of get what I'm talking about there. Problem number two is over pronunciation. I was a massive culprit of this. And problem number three is just generally tones. They're hard for a lot of people. Okay, so let's jump into the first one, pronouncing Chinese like English. This happens to almost everyone, even non-native English speakers. Let me just get the chat here. I'm going to have it right here in front of me so I can sort of read it. in case yeah, so I can read it while I'm presenting it. So yeah, some of you may be experiencing this right now. This obviously happens again because the opinion chart is English based, right? It uses the English alphabet. And so it's very easy to get into bad habits without the right training and start pronouncing it in kind of funny ways. These are these ones present the biggest challenges because they don't exist in English. So the 支持日, the 滋呲丝, and the 机器系, the JQX at the end there. Now, people can start pronouncing these in rather strange ways, and it can be a problem because not only do you feel less confident when you speak, but it's also, you will be misunderstood. And you'll always just sound like a Lao Wei, it'll just sound like a foreigner speaking Chinese. And we want to try and avoid that if we can. Now, just to make this clear, you don't need to have perfect Chinese like pronunciation, of course. In fact, I'd much rather speak to someone with a heavy accent who spoke articulately than someone who had a perfect accent but couldn't speak very well. So vocabulary is by far the most important thing, but it's nice also to be able to, be able to pronounce like a native speaker because you get so many compliments and people understand you successfully way easier. And it's just a very positive cycle that I want you guys to experience. So the R sound can sound like literally the r sound in English instead of a zh with the tongue back. Or the J can just sound like a j. Instead of a ji, it's a j. Or the Q sounds like a ch, like cheese. The X sounds like a sh instead of a s. And it sounds subtle, but it's very important. Because if you don't get this down, the tongue positions, as it were, you'll end up sounding odd and you will be misunderstood. So like 出去is how you'd pronounce it. But I often hear people say like 出去, like there's very little difference between the two sounds when they're very different sounds. Or the second one here, 学校, might come out sounding like 学校, the S sort of sound. 汉字 might sound like hanzi, like a z, like a buzzing sort of English Z. Or, this is a slightly different issue, but hanzi, that can also be an issue, but we'll talk about that later. So, yeah, the Z and the C are often pronounced wrong. 汉字 is like explosive. 字 as opposed to z, like a sort of English buzzing sound. The C, this is a less common issue, but I do notice this as well. You say dance, it should be dance, like an explosive sort of C, but it often comes out dance, and it just comes out like more like an S, you know. And so these are the three tongue positions that you guys need to master. For 支持师, all exactly the same tongue position. So the way that I would suggest you do this is first just say j like you would the English G, or the j sort of sound in English. Hold your tongue there and just sort of let some air pass through. Shh. So it's almost like you're saying that's actually an easier way. So say the sh sound. So you're actually shushing someone. Shh. And as you do that, lift your tongue up slightly, not a lot. You're like choking yourself with your tongue, but just slightly so it makes a slight sort of whistle. So this would be the normal English sort of SH sound. Shh, shh. And then you can maybe hear the difference as I lift my tongue up slightly. So it's shh. This is a slight lift, and it makes it into a sort of a mild whistling sound. That's what you need to sort of get the hang of, is just slightly up. And then the position is not hard, right? But it's about making it explosive, right? So it's the tooth there sort of behind the bottom, the top teeth, as you can see in the middle picture, but it's more like it sort of blocks the air coming out from your mouth. And then it's sort of, I would say actually that picture, it's more like just touching coming towards the roof of your mouth, but just towards your top teeth. So it's more like where the green is. For me personally, it's more about here, I guess. I actually drew these pictures, by the way, like years ago. And like since then, yeah, like my knowledge is sort of, I'm going to tweak it just a little bit here. So it'll be more like the tip of the tongue is more like sort of around this area between the blue and the green. So it's like a zi, zi. So it's more, instead of your tongue being sort of down like it is in the picture, it's more like slightly up, like blocking it and then zi, zi, sort of like that. And then yeah, and the same with the ts. Oh, and actually not the s. The s doesn't is not an it's still in that rough position, but it's not like an explosive. Obviously, it's actually pretty similar to English. But the z and the c are the particularly tough ones. So the c and the z exactly the same sort of mechanics. It's just with the C, the air comes through first and then the sound follows it. Whereas the Z, it's like a sound from the beginning. Z, Z. Whereas the C is tss, tss, so that the air sort of explodes out and then the sound comes in. And then the DTC here, you just say G, chi, she, but you just have your tongue down behind your bottom teeth here. So instead of G, it's Ji. Instead of chi, it's chi, right? So the tough part is just keeping that tongue there. It's kind of especially for this one and this one. So just keeping your tongue in pretty much the same exact position throughout the entire sound when your tongue desperately wants to move around like it does in English. So yeah, so we can experiment with these three words here. And this first word is like, I would say, famously difficult because it involves something that I'm going to talk to you about in a little bit called tongue acrobatics. That's what I call it anyway. So where you do like uh, one sound or tongue position that doesn't exist in English, and then you quickly go to another one that doesn't exist in English. So 出去, 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 知道, 知道, 机器, 机器. So those are some good words to practice. But it's about keeping your tongue in that position for the entire sound. 出, and then moving it down. 去, throughout the entire sound. When we speak English, we tend to move around as we enunciate the sounds, right? You see, my lips are moving, my tongue moves throughout the entire sound. Whereas for a lot of these kind of sounds in Chinese, not all sounds, but like many Chinese sounds like these, it's sort of fixed. Funny enough, 机器, like kind of like a robot, like 机器, 机器. Like I'm not really straining any part of my mouth. And there's some other stuff, that sort of trip people up with pinyin, like the eng here. People think that eng is pronounced eng, but it's not. It's right? And also, this is obviously not mang, it's mang. Right? This is actually pronounced yen, not yan, and this is not oh. So we're taught that the o is oh sound, which it is, but actually these particular sounds here, bopomorpho, are actually a uo sound. Wo, bopomorpho. Okay, so but it's spelled like just a bopomorpho, right? So it confuses people. And then, of course, the U, the umlaut, it just doesn't exist in English either. It exists in German. I'm pretty sure it exists in Swedish. I've been told it's slightly different in these languages, but it's the same mechanics, right? It's roughly the same sound as a U sound. which can again be difficult. People can confuse the U with the O, right? The actual U versus the umlaut U. You know, this can be for sure confusing for native English speakers as well. So, by the way, a little trick for you to pronounce this perfectly, just do the same TCC tongue position, just U, and it just works, right? So that's how you actually pronounce that. So people struggle because they don't understand pinyin, right? They don't actually take some theory. But on the other side, they actually do focus too much on theory and not enough practice, and they don't get enough feedback. So I know that kind of sounds like a contradiction. It's like but you need some theory. Some people need theory, and there are some like naturals out there who can just sort of imitate without any sort of uh, teaching or practice or training. But I think many people, maybe even most people, need a little bit of theory just to sort of get the mechanics down, and then followed by a ton of practice. So what I recommend, and we have full training on my channel. Like, this one's just kind of like a taster, but like we have two videos. There's one which is like got like one over 1 million views at this point. It's a 1 hour video. I would actually recommend like that's fine. That's a good video, but I would recommend there's a 2 hour one. It's got way less views, which is I obviously put a lot more time into that one, and it also includes some tips on how to practice. So I'd recommend you just search pronunciation on our channel and go ahead and find those. And that's the kind of theory that I would recommend. But what a lot of people tend to do is they get stuck in the theory. And I have to remind people on our course a lot about this. You'll get way more results from just practicing the sounds in context, ideally, of like phrases and sentences over and over again than you will from repeatedly watching my video training on pronunciation. So you need like a taste of theory. That 5% is important, right? It's for a lot of people. For example, oh, you need to put your tongue in this position and go ahead and like watch. We have an entire 10-hour course, pronunciation mastery as well, that goes into more detail. But I would treat these sorts of trainings as like a more of like an encyclopedia, which you can 参考, you can just like refer to every now and then, as opposed to uh, this is the way that I'm gonna get really good pronunciation by watching Luke explain the third tone, for the eighth time. It doesn't quite work like that. So that's problem number one, pronouncing like English. Now let's go into over pronunciation. Again, this was probably, my pronunciation did suck in the beginning. It wasn't great. And this was one of the main reasons because I was trying too hard. So one sort of symptom of this that I see a lot is singing. Um, and I'm kind of guilty of this as well. I'm kind of guilty of causing this because in my training, I'll refer to, say, the first tone, for example, as the singing tone, ma. But what that does, that encourages like people to go outside of their vocal range, like ma, like as if they're actually trying to sing ma 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 ma. Like there's as if it's hard to do it. It's hard for me to do it wrong, but I think you get what I'm trying to say. And I remember I didn't want to show this because like I didn't want to make it seem like I was making fun of a learner, because I'm certainly not. But I remember seeing a video of John Cena, who's a famous sort of wrestler turned actor, I think. Really nice guy who's learning Chinese, and he was doing it. I remember watching him speak Chinese, and he was sort of like he's a really like tough dude, and he's got really deep voice, and he's like he would sort of say like 我的名字叫 John Cena, and it would just be clearly very uncomfortable, and this is just a very typical thing that a lot of people do. Because it's weird, right? Like going from speaking a normal language, not a normal language, speaking English to speaking a tonal language rather. And so, and so it could just be, it just takes a long time to sort of get used to it, and this can be a way of dealing with that. It's just sort of singing the tones. Um, and then there's a physical over exaggeration, which I did a ton, especially with that one. What they call this is like the posh linguistic term is the retroflex, where you put your tongue right back like that. Um, or at least that's how I used to do it. That's how I even used to teach it in the early days. Um, like the I used to pronounce it like almost like I was trying to speak in slow motion. It was just very, very uncomfortable. And yeah, you'll find some people, like native speakers, will seem to pronounce like that. Was really, especially in Beijing, it's like super over exaggerated for the way some people speak it. But that's not like standard Mandarin. It's completely unnecessary. Another one is moving your lips when pronouncing the sounds. Like I see people say uh, that they're right? But they'd be like moving, moving, like moving their jaw up and down, moving their lips unnecessarily. And the problem with doing this, first off, obviously it sounds a bit weird, and it looks a bit weird. But also, you can't, if you do this, you can't pronounce accurately at speed. It's really difficult. And so here's some examples, right? So like these are ones that I personally struggled with. These two, especially the middle one, I remember actually struggling with this in my first year of the language. So like I couldn't say these. So 这件事情, and you can imagine why. If you try and say that with me whilst watching this, 这件事 qing, right? Your tongue is going up, down, up, down. It's that tongue acrobatics that I was talking about earlier. Your tongue's just doing this, right? But if you were to pronounce these in a really over enunciated way, like 这件事情, all right, it's you'll be really tired. Your mouth will be tired after a couple of sentences, and you would just not want to be doing it anymore. Here's another one as well. See if you can say this one. 截止日期之前，right? I used to struggle with this. I could not say it. And the reason why I couldn't say it was because I was saying it like this. 截止日期之前. Just trying to like over enunciate. Now, people that go to like native speakers that go to like a broadcasting school, like if you ever watch like Phil enjoys these. Like you ever watch these radio shows where they do radio adverts? That's exactly how they talk. They'll be like, 如果你有, they're like talking with a really deep voice and really over enunciated. Yeah, and then the way they read the phone numbers and stuff. 一八八幺八, whatever they say. It's really funny. And they can do it because they're native speakers and they train for years and years and years. But to actually just have a casual conversation, obviously you don't want to sound like that, right? 清清楚楚,清清楚楚,清清楚楚. Right. So as for how I got to the point where I could say them, I'll go into that in a little bit. So, of course, we over pronounce because we think we have to act Chinese because it's so different. It's as different pretty much as you can get. And also teachers, including myself, yeah, I'm guilty. Like teachers like will over enunciate when teaching, and it confuses people. Like I remember very clearly the yun sort of pronunciation, like Qun, like chun chun. Teachers, I believe correctly, do show the mechanics by chun. Like they really over enunciate and show you how the mouth works. But then they miss the second part, which is again, that's the theory they're showing you, but they miss the practice, how to actually practice in the right way so that, yes, you get the mechanics down, but you also end up sounding like a native speaker. That's very key. And yeah, we never learn how to sound natural at speed. Again, that's the practice side, which I'll get into shortly. So that's the second major problem, overpronouncing. The third problem is tones, right? It's scary, but not necessarily for the reasons that you might think. Okay. So here's how I recommend addressing tones. So Pillar one is kind of get the foundational understanding, understand them on a basic level, and then active recall practice, like forcing your brain to produce and recall tones quickly and accurately. And finally, immersive listening and actually application, like producing the sounds. So, so to master pronunciation, you must first build a strong theoretical foundation. Okay. So understands how they work. You can do this by listening to individual tones and, you know, do look at tongue positions as well. So I'm sort of talking about not just tones, but this is like all three problems, basically, how to solve all of them. Master the key tongue positions, the pinyin spellings, the weird stuff, right, with some theory, and then focus on precise articulation and just common pronunciation challenges. When I say that, I mean like where are you not getting it, right? So you can use certain techniques, which I'll get into in just a sec, for pinpointing and getting good feedback, and then pinpointing where you're going wrong, and then zoning in on particular issues. And then this is key. Once you understand the theory, move on, don't obsess over it, right? Apply through practice. That's where most of your results will come from, is the practice side. And so pillar number two is massive input. Okay, so I would recommend everyone, if you're learning Chinese, whether you're a beginner, intermediate, more advanced, you spend at least an hour a day listening to real Chinese. Because your brain needs to understand not just individual tones, individual sounds, it needs to understand in context of multiple tones many, many times over. And just passive listening while you're doing other things, while you're on your commute, while you are at the gym, while you're on the way to, well, anything really. Travel is like a huge one. But find the gaps in your day and just have earbuds and just put them in your ear and just listen as much as you can. Ideally to stuff that you can understand, right? And extensive listening is like around 98% understanding. So stuff that you're very familiar with ideally. But again, if you're a beginner, beggars can't be choosers, right? So you can just listen to more basic stuff and just try to understand as much as you can. But what that will do is you'll gradually, over weeks and months, if you do this consistency, you will naturally just pick up tones and the natural rhythm, the prosody of the language. And things like the difference between versus right? Very subtle sounds, you'll start to be able to pick out those as well. So that's really key. So understand the theory. So this is like the theory, understanding of the theory, and then massive input. Here are some input sources you can use. My favorite is this top left one here. Example sentences with audio, right? Or just audio of example sentences, thousands of them. Common, useful sentences that you're actually going to need in the language. But you can also experiment with graded readers. There's tons of apps for those like Dual Chinese and Mandarin Companion. Learn a podcast, Chinese pod, that kind of thing. And then, of course, native content, stuff that you're actually interested in. So the reason why it's important to do this is that you get your ears used to not just how Chinese sounds, but how different dialects, accent sounds, different genders, like listen to, be able to understand male and female, people from different, like north and south, which do sound quite different, but they're also very standard. They're very common sort of accents that you'll find in real day-to-day life. And that will help of course, you're listening, but it will help your pronunciation as well, becoming more familiar with these different, let's say, types of the language, different forms of Mandarin. And then finally, the third pillar is high rep output. Okay, so obviously you need lots of input that trains your ears, and it does help with build the foundation of good pronunciation, but you're not going to be able to pronounce properly unless you do tons of output practice. And the two key techniques that actually work are listen and repeat and shadowing. Right, so I'll demo for you. So listen and repeat, it's very simple. But the key really for me is finding sentences that you actually will use. So there's certain apps that I won't mention, like that will teach you phrases that you're never going to use in real life that sound kind of weird, actually. And so I would recommend like phrases that you're actually going to use in day-to-day life that you can imagine yourself actually wanting and needing to use soon. Play it, you pause it, or there's a pause built into the audio file. You repeat it aloud. You're trying to match the speed, tone, and emotion exactly. So you're really trying to imitate them as best you can. And you do multiple reps per sentence. This is also quite important. So instead of just having like let's say you have an audio file with like 50 sentences on it or something, or 100 or 1,000 sentences, just listening to each sentence and repeating it once, you might get a lot more out of it if you repeat each sentence minimum of 3 times. And this sort of goes back to what I was talking about earlier. Remember I said that I was struggling with certain sounds, like tongue acrobatics put together? Well, basically, how I dealt with that problem was I would play a sentence that I was struggling with the problem initials in there or what have you, and I would just repeat it. I would slow down until I could say it correctly, and then I would repeat it multiple times and gradually increase the speed. So what I can do is I'll show you how we do this with this new web app that we've built for our coaching clients. Containing, this is using a course that we have called the Phrase Vault. And so I've just selected a bunch of phrases here. And what we get our clients to do is just take each of these phrases and repeat them multiple times. So you can do that individually here.
那边是入口吗？
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 那边是入口吗？ You can also just slow it down. Obviously, if you're using like a standard media player, you can do this, but I would recommend like no slower than like 0.8%. Otherwise, they start to sound like a bit weird and drunk.
那边是入口吗？
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 And you just do that.
直走，
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 直走。
直走, right? Repeat, repeat, repeat. And you'll notice that, let's say, obviously I can do it like good straight away, but like if obviously if it's a new sentence, there'll probably be some challenges, right?
请问洗手间在哪里？
like that one's a really hard one, right? 洗手间, that's another one, tongue acrobatic. 洗手间. So that one you might be like, okay, you might struggle in the first one. 洗手的 in the first one.
请问
请问
洗手间在哪里？
洗手, oh God, I got that wrong.
请问洗
请问
手间
洗
在
手间
哪里？
在哪里? And then you'll notice an improvement every time you do it. And to be honest, doing like 8, 10 reps of each one is pretty boring. But the more you do, the better. But don't burn yourself out. Do not get bored. Like, don't force yourself to do this to the point where you hate the activity. But it is where amazing results will come. So what we can do here is we'll say we're going to loop each sentence 3 times. I'm going to play at 0.9 speed and with 0 pause. Okay.
那边是入口吗？直走。
Oh, sorry. We do need a pause because we're doing listen and repeat, obviously.
远不远？
远不远？
请问洗手间在哪里？
洗手间在哪里? Oh, sorry. I forgot to turn on the loop function. Here we go. Let's try again.
请问那边是入口吗？那边是
那
入
边是入
口吗？
口吗？
那边
那边是入
是入口吗？
口吗？
那边是入口吗？
那边是入口吗？
直走，
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 直走。
直走。
远不远？
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 远不远？ Oh, that's a hard
远
one.
不远？
远不远？
请问洗手间在
请问
哪里？
洗手间在哪
请
里？
问洗手
请问
间在哪里？请问洗手间
洗
在哪
手间
里？
在哪里？Just like that. So
可以走路去吗？
So you just repeat, repeat, repeat. with useful sentences, and that's like an exercise you can just do every day. And then the shadowing technique is very simple, similar. It's also very simple. So you just read along with the text, you shadow without the text, then you record yourself and compare. Those are like the three sort of phases of shadowing. So first, I'll have the text here in front of me, which you'll need. Obviously, you pinyin if you don't know the characters, and you'll just be following it sentence by sentence and shadowing along with the audio. So as you hear it, you're producing it. So instead of the pause, which I naturally just started doing then because I'm used to shadowing, not listening, repeating. So shadowing is ideally if you have a good enough level, you just straight away do shadowing. But you do the listen and repeat first if you're a beginner.
可以走路
可以走路
去吗？
去吗？
往前走
往前走
三个路口就
三个路
到了。
口就到了。So I'm reading it from here 了。
这是什么
这是什么
地方？
地方？
我是第
我是
一次来
第一次来
这里。
这里。So this is like a tried and true proven technique. A lot of translators use this, the high level translators, as a technique to sort of get used to producing the language quickly as you hear it. And so, yeah, but it is difficult. It's more difficult than just your standard listen and repeat, but it's a highly effective activity. So this is just an example of what you could do, right? So if you were struggling with pronunciation, you wanted to improve it, you could just do 15 minutes of shadowing a day. Now, it doesn't have to be in the morning, but like you just find a good, like for example, uh, when I had my dogs, um, I would go on a walk every day, right, with them. And that was like 15, 20 minutes I had there. So I just got in the habit of always just doing shadowing while walking my dogs. And throughout the day as well, you're filling the gaps with passive listening. And then optional, what you could do in the evening is do some recording and comparison where you actually just because you know how it's like where you don't know how you sound like on the phone, right? You don't understand like it's kind of like that. Sometimes you can't hear mistakes when you say it, but when you record it and you play it back, you compare it with the audio, it just makes it a lot easier. So for example, here you got like I've got the Apple like voice memos thing. So I could be on here. I could just record myself doing it like this.
那边是入口
那
吗？
边是入口吗？
直走。
直走。And then I could
远不远？
and then I could play it back.
那边是入口
那
吗？
边是入口吗？And I could compare it against the audio. But that's like an extra step. You don't have to do that. Not all of you want to be dedicated enough to do that. But at the very least, what you can do is just see how the day went and prepare your materials for tomorrow, just to reduce the friction. Make sure that all your materials sort of prepared on your phone, ready to go. And so here's an example, because the results can come really quick, right? If you put in time consistently every day, if you're struggling with pronunciation right now with Mandarin, first of all, that's completely normal because Mandarin pronunciation is genuinely challenging. But this is something that can be improved over not years, but weeks, right? Even days, you'll notice a big difference. In fact, when people watch my pronunciation training, just a few sort of theoretical tidbits about where to put your tongue and things like that could immediately, and usually often do, immediately change how people react to their pronunciation. Like, it's almost immediate. But then for the real changes to happen, where you can actually pronounce Mandarin at speed fluently, that could take weeks or months. But it doesn't have to be like hours and hours of grueling practice every day. It could be like 15, 30 minutes a day if you do it with the right activities for the right amount of time. So that's it. It's not about talent, right? And again, you don't maybe super talented people, I don't know, like can just do everything perfectly without practice. I don't know. But it's about the right method, the right practice techniques, just done consistently in a smart way. a little bit every day as opposed to super intense is not necessary. And you do that after a few days or weeks, I guarantee you'll see a stark improvement. Okay, so once again, go ahead to mandarinblueprint.com if you want to actually be involved and get some like training materials and try out our course for free and actually learn not just to pronounce the language, but also to read, understand, and eventually speak and write even the language, then go ahead and check it out. And that's it. You just jump in here, see if got any anyone's got any questions. We'll do a little Q&A here if you guys got questions. So Edward says, when I first started learning, tones were like some dark art that seemed impossible to say, and even harder to hear. I've gotten a lot better at tones these days, and I find that finding an appropriate rhythm of sentences really helps with tones. I find that overpronunciation tends to rear its ugly head whenever I get nervous or overthink what I'm saying. I mean, that is a huge factor that a lot of people miss. Like, for example, like I'm not I get nervous too still when I talk to certain types of people, right? So like when I talk to my friend, like went out the other night, I'm pretty much as fluent as I can be when I'm talking to him because I'm just comfortable with him. There's no judgment. There's no pressure, right? But if I was like, I don't know, performing on stage or doing some speech in Chinese, of course, or just speaking to someone where there are some stakes, or at least some perceived stakes based on my own ego, right? There's not actually real stakes. But like I could, for example, be talking to my wife's family, and I only see them like once every 2 years or something. And I don't want them to think maybe that my Chinese has gotten worse, and so I'm also sort of there's all these different thoughts going on in my head. Or for example,比如说现在我在做一个直播，现在讲中文，我觉得我讲的挺差的，就是因为那个各种各样的压力，就是很那个压力挺大的，所以有很多心态方面的因素会影响我的口语的那个水平。So like I feel like I'll stumble a bit more when I speak Chinese, right? In this situation with you guys, because it's like live on YouTube, you get the idea. But that's completely normal. Um, Jose says that's the worst is higher. Well, that's let me just show you that what I'm talking about here. Higher. Well, that's yeah, the reason why that's hard is because that's not how it's pronounced, right? Har, right? It's that when the R 化音, that can be a problem, but it's more about reading it. To imitate it is pretty easy, but yeah, that's another one. I had no idea what tones were at all and had a hard time understanding the concept at first. Yeah, it's so weird at first. It's like, what? But another thing that does massively help is our with tones specifically, which I can't believe I didn't mention actually. I completely forgot about this, but it's like a huge deal. So like tones, yeah, you fix tones and every other pronunciation problem really by just doing the things that I mentioned, by just getting like a little bit of theory, getting a lot of listening and a lot of speaking practice, but also the hands and movie method, right? Our memory palace technique for learning characters, super effective. Like super effective for learning your tones. Because like every character you learn, or at least a common pronunciation of it, you're associating the tone with a room within a building that you know very well. It's like a memory palace technique, right? So, for example, sh is fourth tone, and when you learn that character, you're in the bathroom, which represents fourth tone. And so you've got a 可视化的锚点, like a visual anchor, like associated with that tone, with that character. And so it's it makes it way harder to get it wrong. And yeah, there are many tones with multiple pronunciations and stuff. There's like 20% of them have like multiple pronunciations, but more often than not, it's the secondary, it's the other pronunciation is like way less common. So it's not, you just pick it up naturally as time goes on. Um, and so, but yeah, that also makes another massive difference. So again, if you guys aren't already on the course, go ahead and check it out. And if you want to like chat or you want to jump on the call, just raise your hand. Let me see here. I'm like trying to. Where's the actual Zoom app? Like disappeared. Hang on a second. Oh, there you are. Yes, we've got Anna, we've got Annette, Chris, Edward, Eugene, Heidi, Isabel, John, Jose, Keith, Matilda, Soraya, Terry, Tony. If you guys want to jump on and have a chat, ask some questions, go ahead. I've got another few minutes left here. Happy to jump on. Let's have a look. If not, no worries. All right, guys. Well, look, I hope you found that useful. And yeah, let me know in the comments below. Just comment below this video on YouTube or in the chat, I'm not really sure which one, or in the school community. And let me know what kind of live sort of content you'd like to see. Because I'd like to do more of these. I'm planning on doing like several more before the end of the year. And so you just let me know what you think would be useful, and I'll put something together and we'll jump on a call and go through it. But for now, that's all.